Welcome to Category Management Knowledge Group's course preview on leveraging data for advanced shelving solutions. Most retailers and suppliers lack the means to create space plans that optimally balance inventory, assortment, and presentation requirements. Some retailers treat all stores the same, with store clusters being based on section sizes in stores versus consumers that shop within the stores. And others are making decisions based on listing fees instead of strategic assortment and shelving choices. There's an opportunity to move to a more strategic space approach for both retailers and suppliers. Here are the learning objectives for the full course. There are several hands-on workshops included that help students to practice their new learnings and learn how to apply their new skills. We'll only cover a few of the objectives in this course preview. Let's get started. Space management has changed significantly over the past 20 years, and in many ways it's stayed the same. What's changed? Technology has improved significantly in space planning software. Data sources have become more plentiful, including store-level data, consumer data, and most recently, shopper research data. And there's much more collaboration between retailers and vendors than ever before. There are also many things that have remained the same in space management. Many retailers continue to see high out-of-stock levels. The average grocer now stocks thousands of items more than it did 10 years ago, but sales productivity has not improved and in some cases has fallen. Most retailers lack the means to create space plans that optimally balance inventory, assortment, and presentation requirements. Some retailers are still treating all stores the same, with store clusters being based on section sizes in stores versus consumers that shop within the stores. And others are making decisions based on listing fees instead of strategic assortment and shelving choices. Retail selling space and inventory represent significant capital investments for any retailer, and there continues to be an opportunity for retailers to focus on making the right investments for categories at a store level. A retailer's inventory and operating expenses have a direct impact on the retailer's income statement through the cost of goods sold. Their balance sheet, which is another financial report, captures any inventory on hand. This is considered an asset on the retailer's balance sheet. Based on this, planograms have the potential of becoming so much more than a picture of what the shelf should look like. A tool that can help retailers with inventory management all the way to the shelf, satisfy target consumer needs, and give stores what they need to merchandise at a store level. All of this impacts the bottom line for the retailer. To create strategic planograms, you need the right inputs. The better the input into the planogram, the better the output. There are 3 types of inputs required for developing planograms: retailer strategies, fixture dimensions, and product information. Different levels of information are required for more sophisticated planograms. To create a pretty picture planogram with no analytics, you need the fixture dimensions for the shelf set you are creating. You need to understand the retailer's strategies associated with fixtures, and you need to have accurate product dimensions, which can include optimal live images. To create a more advanced planogram, you can add in retailer strategy perspective, including shelving principles and new products. The consumer decision tree and product hierarchies at an item level will give the planogram different views based on the segments that are important to the consumer. Add in a retailer's sales, profit, and inventory targets, and their product data at an item level and consumer demographics, and your planogram becomes more advanced. You can start clustering your stores based on different consumer groups and creating assortments for different clusters. By adding in store-level data, including target consumer demographics, you can start to develop store-specific planograms. Successful space management execution requires consideration of all of these inputs. Based on these different levels of input, you will get different levels of output. Inputs in the bottom levels of the pyramids for retailer strategies and product information will result in more basic planograms. The more inputs that are added as you move up the pyramids, the more sophisticated your planograms will become. If all of these inputs are included in the planogram, the result is a strategic, fact-based cluster or store-specific set of planograms. Successful space management execution requires considerations of all of these inputs. Once infused with proper item-level data inputs and data, planograms can become shopper-focused tools that also help retailers properly manage their inventory. In this course, we will be covering some of the ways that you can attain more strategic planograms, starting with some best practices, and then moving into store cluster and store-specific planograms. And then the implementation of planograms in stores, and some of the barriers that you may face. This course will focus on the strategic side of planogram development, and will not cover the specific software technical training associated with advanced space management. Let's start with understanding space management best practices. As I already mentioned, in the full course version, we review many space management best practices, which will help you to move to more advanced and strategic space management. The important thing to remember is that you shouldn't necessarily be responsible for planogram development to understand the analytic power and capabilities within it. If you make any decisions or recommendations that influence the shelf, you should be well educated on how those changes are going to affect the shelf. Let's look at an example of the first best practice, proper planogram inputs. Best practices start with having the proper data inputs from the planogram, starting with the basics. First, there's product information. You need to have a unique identifier, which is used for identification, reporting, and matching when importing external data sources. Product height, width, and depth should be measured in a consistent format and is sometimes made available through a common industry product library. Fixture dimensions create the foundation for the planogram and always need to be verified. Finally, planogram dimensions should also be reviewed. When using a planogram that you did not personally build, it's advised that you review the fixtures and planograms for any issues. 3D mode is available in most shelving softwares, which is a great option for quickly reviewing both empty and merchandised planograms. Open the planogram in 3D and ensure that the fixtures look how you expect them to look. Check the base deck, base shelf, slopes, grills, and anything else that you do or do not want for this planogram. Some tools allow you to split or tile the view to see the top and side at the same time as the front. This few seconds invested in this step could save you many minutes or even hours later in the process. Best practices include building fixtures that are the same size as the physical segments in the store. This is typically 4 feet and can be 8 feet for warehouse-type racks. In this example, we recommend not building one 8-foot fixture for an 8-foot planogram. It might be easier to manage at the beginning, but it restricts you from some automation that you'll likely want to use when building localized or store-specific planograms. So based on best practices, this planogram would be built with 2 4-foot gondolas, each their own set of shelves. The graphic shows an 8-foot planogram built with 2 4-foot shelves. Be sure to turn on the ability for the software to treat the 2 shelves as if they are one contiguous shelf, instead of 2 separate shelves so that product can span across them. Once we walk through all 10 best practices in great detail, we change the discussion to cover the many different reasons to create a planogram, some which are less known than others. Planograms may be developed behind new product launches, to sell in new concepts, satisfy the needs of many through generic planograms, or to create retailer-specific planograms. Let's go through each of these in more detail. When new products are launched, vendors need to show how and where they fit on the shelf. Retailers may need to do this behind private label brand launches as well. Planograms can be created that can be used across retailers or create retailer-specific planograms. These planograms will serve more as a visual aid, and until a vendor gets buy-in to what the retailer is going to list, a lot of time shouldn't be spent in retailer-specific planograms. Other considerations for new product launches are to ensure that the planogram development is completed as the new products are being developed and not as an afterthought. This proactive approach will ensure that all considerations for the shelf are done in advance. Vendors also need to consider the retailer's planogram schedule for the category, and that different retailers have very different schedules and processes. The last chapter of this accredited course covers store-specific planograms. The industry has been creating iterations of chain and cluster planograms for the last 25 years. At the same time, retail competition has intensified, channels have blurred, margins have eroded, merchandising effectiveness has slipped, out-of-stocks have risen, market demographics have become more diversified, and consumers have become less loyal and more selective. Today, there's much talk about the store-level planograms. The technology and data that are available today can make store-level planograms work. The decision to move to store-specific planograms is not as easy as it may seem because of the upfront investment and the increased resources required for such an undertaking. The aura of store-specific planograms may be luring, but you need to ensure you understand the process of getting it done and the costs and benefits of making the leap. There's an evolution that you should consider, rather than attempting to move directly from limited planogramming into store-specific. The move from many planograms to store-specific is a big leap that should be taken in increments. By creating many planograms, followed by localized planograms, and then moving to store-specific planograms, you will avoid wasted time and frustration. In the full course, we walk you through these steps in detail to ensure that you have a great understanding of the requirements and considerations associated with this journey. Let's summarize the most important learnings you'll get from the full Advanced Space Management course. Advanced space planning benefits all tie back in with the retailer's income statement. Singular space management best practices may appear to be merely shelving tactics. But by adopting these best practices as a strategy into your space planning processes, you are aligning store merchandising more strategically to the retailer's overall objectives. And this ultimately results in increased sales, reduced cost of goods sold, and/or reduced operating expenses. You've now completed this course preview on Advanced Space Management. So where do you go from here? If you're interested in purchasing this popular certified course, or working with us to help you determine training opportunities for you, your team, or your organization, that will ultimately lead to a new level of advanced strategic understanding and approach in future space management projects, please contact us. We don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach and will consult with you to ensure that what we deliver meets your specific needs and business issues. We hope to hear from you soon. Have an excellent day.